The following Agios-supported podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please speak with your healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
Okay, I think we're almost ready to start. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this is our Thal Pals podcast. Probably once a month. It's monitored by Dr. Kevin Kuo and our own Nina Maria Baltamasti. But we have different moderators today. Kevin's here, but I really suggest everybody check Spotify or your Apple Podcasts or wherever you get podcasts. Look for Thal Pals because Agios has been doing a fantastic job getting the word out and getting us on these different podcasts. And you're hearing different patients' stories, different experiences. There's one on the foundation, but you're really getting to know the patient. There's been some fantastic doctors on, and it's international as well. So we bring in everybody from all over the world. So you're learning, you're continuing learning. But right now, we've been hearing some really good things in the patient panel. Being in the patient panel and being in the patient room, it was just amazing to see how far we've come. And the things we're talking about now compared to the things we were talking about 10, 20 years ago. So it gives me my great pleasure right now to introduce the CEO of Agios, Mr. Brian Goff.
Thanks a lot. We obviously did not plan our stage entrance. So good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Goff. I'm the CEO of Agios. And the lights are pretty bright, so I can't see you very well, but I must say your costumes were very impressive yesterday. You're hard to recognize this morning. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm here with a few other colleagues from Agios. And the first thing I want to say is thank you so much for inviting us in to be part of what feels like a family reunion. It is very special for us over this weekend to be able to learn so many insights, hopes, challenges, fears, really part of the collective thalassemia journey. And it's not new for us. We actually have been working very closely as a partner with CAF for the last 5+ years, and we value that relationship very, very much. I just wanted to share a brief story that undoubtedly many of you know. I know Janice knows this story very well about the founding of Cooley's Anemia Foundation. It actually goes back about 70 years. And it features an Italian-American by the name of Frank Ficara, who was a butcher in Brooklyn. And Frank's life changed dramatically when he had 2 children who were both born with thalassemia. And like any passionate parent, and there are many, many passionate parents in this room, Frank took it upon himself to organize neighborhood blood drives for the benefit of his children as well as other children who needed blood. And over time, Frank realized that's not enough, and he wanted to do even more. And so the next step of the journey was that one evening he organized many family members to gather in the back of his butchery. And I'll just pause for a second. And when I first heard this story, I tried to imagine, what does the back of a butchery look like? I don't know. I would just say that this is a much better setting. But he organized all these families together, and that's where it all began, with the passion for advocating for research, advocating for policies that really promote great innovation. And that was the formation of Cooley's Anemia Foundation. And the reason I share that story is because what we've experienced this weekend is another great example of what Frank started with, which is the power of one. And everybody in this room has tremendous power in your ability to advocate in your own way. And we've already seen, great examples, and we're going to hear more shortly. But also, more importantly, the power of many. And that's what this weekend is all about. That's obviously the mission of Cooley's Anemia Foundation. And again, we're just so pleased and proud to be a part of that. So again, thanks a lot for allowing us into the family reunion. And without further ado, all these great folks behind me are about to engage in a live podcast of Thal Pals. And very apropos, the theme of this discussion will be thriving with thalassemia. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kevin Kuo, as well as our magic star Shae from yesterday, who we heard from. But let's welcome them and all the guests this morning. Thanks a lot. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Brian. So welcome to Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution, and we are coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, and in front of a live studio audience. Say hello, Thal Pals. Awesome, thank you. My name is Kevin Kuo, and we are so excited to welcome you to this special episode titled Thriving with Thalassemia. I remember the last time we had a live episode, and that was in New Orleans a few years ago, so I'm very pleased that we're having another live episode today for Thal Pals. Now, before we get to the panel, though, I do want to introduce and welcome our great co-host, Shae Ghosh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As Dr. Kuo introduced me, I am Shae, or Shae Ghosh, and last year I was on that side of the panel with the teen podcast, also through Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution. So it feels really nice to be on this side and not be the one who's being grilled. And I'm really excited to hear all about their stories this time.
All right, so thank you, Shae. So today's episode topic is Thriving with Thalassemia. And we have an excellent panel to discuss with you today. But before we hand it over to them, Shae, how do you thrive with thalassemia?
That's a really great question. And I feel like, for me at least, as a high school senior, thriving with thalassemia mainly means being able to balance all of the things that I do in school and all of the things that I want to do with my life, while also dealing with my thalassemia treatment and making sure that my health is where I want it to be. So thriving really just means balancing all of that while also making sure that thalassemia isn't a barrier or a hindrance to anything that I really want to do or accomplish.
Well, thank you, Shae, for your story. And I have to say, I think, many of you, as well as Shae, takes courage to strike that balance, and I congratulate you on being able to do that and thrive. And I really feel that you have a great future ahead of you, and I'm thrilled to be on the stage together with you today to co-host this episode. Now, well, audience, are you ready to meet our panel right there?
Agios is a biopharmaceutical company that's fueled by connections with patient communities, healthcare professionals, patients, and each other. Building on these connections and the company's unmatched leadership in the field of cellular metabolism, Agios is pioneering therapies of genetically defined diseases, a broad group of rare and more common diseases that are typically severe and life-threatening. Near term, Agios is focusing on hemolytic and acquired anemias, including sickle cell disease, pyruvate kinase or PK deficiency, and thalassemia. To learn more, visit agios.com. That's agios.com.
So let's start with meeting Pranav Saha. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Shae. Hi, everyone. I'm Pranav Saha. I'm a 44-year-old E-beta thal transfusion dependent and spend my days chasing a very beautiful 1.5-year-old new dad. I was born in India and diagnosed pretty early at birth, or very soon after birth, with thalassemia intermedia. And what that meant was the recommendation was no treatment. But still, my parents sort of took that diagnosis and used it as a motivation to immigrate to the US. So I grew up in the US, wasn't treated until age 9, where I was re-diagnosed as thalassemia major. But if you were to see pictures of me as a child, you would have pointed at that picture and said, that's a kid who needs a transfusion. So it was quite a big difference, right? Big change, right? From at age 9 to start to jump into treatment. And I've been treated ever since. I'm currently treated at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Professionally, I'm a cybersecurity consultant, which also keeps me very busy. I'm very, very excited for today to talk through all our adventures.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Zahra Pakbaz, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. Thank you for having me in the panel. I know some of you saw me yesterday in the lecture for adrenal insufficiency, so I sit on the both sides. So I have thalassemia. I was transfusion dependent. I was born in Iran, raised in Iran. I did my medical training in Iran and then moved to US, and I had to redo all the exams and then go to residency and fellowship, and then I've been a hematologist for the past 11 years, and I have my own clinic for benign hematology because I see there is a big need at least in California. I work at UC Irvine School of Medicine, and I take care of sickle cell patients, thalassemia patients, and rest of other non-cancer blood disorders. And happy to be here.
And last but certainly not least, Robert Menino, let's have you introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Menino. I am a 33-year-old transfusion-dependent beta thalassemia major patient who lives here in Atlanta, Georgia, with my wonderful wife and two beautiful toddlers who are running around in the audience right now. I got my PhD in biomedical engineering at Georgia Tech and Emory, and currently work at a small biotech business called Sanguina, where we develop point-of-care diagnostic tools for people with anemia and try to commercialize some of the technologies that I developed in grad school. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. And as a doctor, I'm deeply aware of the fact that people living with thalassemia faces many challenges. And even yesterday, I was just so encouraged by the courage and bravery of all the children I've met upstairs when I was doing a session with them. Like, I spent time with them, hearing their stories about them, talking about their own diseases, achieving self-efficacy. I think that's just so difficult, but so brave at the same time. And I have such admiration for each and every one of you. But the other thing I also want to say is that what we hope as doctors, at least, is that we hope that by providing you with the treatments that you need and so forth, that we don't let the disease define you, is that you should be able to define yourself. And so I'm going to ask you, Shae, maybe to start off and talking about maybe start off on the conversation, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually physicians and doctors like you and Dr. Pakbaz that really inspire me. And honestly, I also am hoping to pursue a career as a doctor, maybe even a hematologist. So, Dr. Pakbaz, what are some of the challenges that you face as a hematologist that has a very busy schedule with your patients and really caring for your patients? So how do you make time to care for yourself?
Good question. So, I think it's you have to have a positive attitude, and being a doctor helps me to be a better, take care of myself, actually. And you make the time, in a busy time, you can I've been able to manage my blood transfusions and then not interfering with my work, and you find a way. It depends on your schedule, and you kind of prioritize your transfusions, and then you schedule everything else around the transfusion, because you can't meet your care. If you miss your care and then you don't look good, then how are you going to be able to take care of your patients and then have them be doing what they are supposed to do? They look up to you, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. Now, Pranav, you told us that you're a cybersecurity expert. Now, that must be very difficult, right, in terms of balancing your treatment with thalassemia and also being a world expert in cybersecurity. Do you travel? Like how do you find that balance?
Yeah, I've had a very, very heavy travel profile with work. And if you take away the health part of thalassemia, there's a big logistics part of thalassemia, right? Which is the lab work, the clinic day, which is just the baseline, and then all the comprehensive care, right? Audiology, cardiology, endocrinology, all the ologies, and I won't even try to remember them all. So for me, with travel, I really just have to make sure I'm scheduling everything well in advance. And for a while, I was traveling heavily internationally as well. And I never tried to do a transfusion internationally, but what I had to do is make sure I was home. My travel schedule kept me home on my clinic week. So it's just a lot of planning.
A follow-up question to that then. Do you shift your transfusion schedule to suit your travel needs?
I try not to. So very much to what Zahra was saying is prioritize the health, prioritize the clinic day. Work will always exist, right? And work will never go away. So I try to prioritize my clinic day, but I'll certainly shift a couple days here and there as needed. I get transfused every 4 weeks. I can go every 5. It's a little bit miserable, but if needed, I can do that extra week to accommodate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it really seems like balancing and like learning how to balance your thalassemia with everything that you're all doing is such an important life skill to have learned, and each of you have such amazing experiences that have led you to where you are now. So with that in mind, Robert, what are some of the biggest lessons that you might have learned along your way on how to thrive with thalassemia?
The biggest lessons that I've learned in order to thrive with thalassemia are probably to be consistent. So compliance is very important, and life doesn't stop just because you have thalassemia. So being able to get into a routine where, like, this is when I take my chelation, when I'm at my transfusion, I'm going to schedule out the future ones so that I know exactly when they're going to happen, and they get on my work calendar so I can prioritize everything that goes on there. My transfusion days are going to be my call days, like where I'm taking calls and I'm just, on the Zoom calls with the IV, and people just have to deal with it. Staying focused on physical health, so like getting in the gym, because I can't just come home from a transfusion really tired and tell my toddler that I can't pick her up, right? Like it's happening either way. So I'm in the gym, I'm running, I'm staying focused on physical health, and I make it a priority to just keep a routine, and that's how I'm best able to thrive.
Rob, good for you for working at the clinic, because I found I don't trust myself on Benadryl. So.
Oh yeah, the brain fog can get pretty bad. Sometimes I've definitely caught myself in the middle of a thought and just like totally lose it. Doesn't happen very often though.
And I actually have a follow-up question for any of you to answer, but you've all talked a lot about how prioritizing your thalassemia is really important. So how have you all, or like any of you who want to answer, how have you learned to set boundaries with maybe like your workspace or work life to make sure that you're able to prioritize your thalassemia?
I can go. I'm very much like Pranav. Health comes first, no matter what. So every job, school, whatever I've ever had knows that. I'm going to take my transfusions days. This is when they are, and I'm not going to be there on those days. I'm going to be taking calls, and you're going to see the IV pump, you're going to hear the beeps, and you're going to just have to deal with it. And honestly, in my line of work, it actually probably helps more than anything else, but I always make that a priority.
Rob, you brought up doing Zoom calls during your transfusion. In fact, in my clinic, I've converted a lot of the clinic rooms to for my patients to actually do Zoom calls and to do virtual working while they're getting transfusions. Have you found any sort of accommodations that maybe your clinic does for you as well that you find special?
Well, there is Wi-Fi everywhere,
Yes.
right? So like when I go for my transfusion, I do my notes. I'm not in clinic every day, so we have some certain number of clinics, but then you have to write notes. So that's the best time to write transfusion. You're 4 hours there, so you can write a lot of your notes and just connect to Wi-Fi, and then there's this, follow-up on things and answer pages. All these can be done when you're in clinic, and it's not affecting your work, and you'll be more productive because you're kind of quiet sitting there and then doing your stuff. So you have to be able to, as everybody said, think ahead of time. And that becomes your it has to be your routine. You can't just do things by not knowing what's going to happen, right? So like you can schedule your transfusion 6 months in advance so that it doesn't interfere with meetings, your research meetings and stuff. So just with a little bit of, it's not easy, right? But if you had choice, you didn't want to have thalassemia. But when you have thalassemia, then you have to have a positive, attitude. Say, sit down with yourself and say, this is what I have. I have to get over with it, get on with it with the rest of my life, right? At least until the gene therapy becomes available to everybody. I think that's, and then impossible doesn't exist in my vocabulary. That's another thing that I have learned. And also, I have the privilege to work with a lot of patients. So I see if I had the choice to choose between bad and worse, like if God would tell me, oh, you're supposed to have either thalassemia or one of these other cases that you see, like aplastic anemia, like cancer, right, sickle cell disease. So in these diseases, you don't have a choice. You spend most of your life in hospital until you get your bone marrow transplant, or sickle cell patients, they don't even have the idea when the crisis is going to come. And then when it comes, it ruins your life for like another month, right? So this is, it's kind of, and if you talk to anybody in this room, everybody has some health issue, right? There is nobody saying, no, I don't have anything. That's a rare thing. Now, some people have less severe, some people have more severe. So it's not the end of the life, and you see, and it doesn't matter if you be a doctor or engineer. It's just you have to have a dream and don't give up. You follow your dream. Regardless of having thalassemia or not, if you are a person who just sits there expecting people to do things for you or not fight for what you want, then you're not going to get anywhere, right? So, and thalassemia is like another challenge you have. Everybody has something in their life going on, right? So that's how I think got me to where I am, which is where I wanted to be.
Dr. Pakbaz, that's very inspirational, and those are very solid advice that you have given. Are these also the advice that you also give to your patients? How do you encourage them?
Yeah, as in some patients I share with them that, well, it's not the end of the world, especially with children. Like I used to work with children as well. And then one time I went to a conference, and then they saw my boss. And then one of the doctors told my boss that, what did you do with this patient? He came to your center, and then completely, when they came back, they were completely different person. And then he called me and said, hey, Zahra, come here. And then she said, she did this. And I said, well, the only thing you do is share with the patient, right? And then say, well, it's not the end of the world. Here I'm a doctor. You can be whatever you want. You don't have to be a doctor if you don't want to, but dream something, want to be something, and then go for it. And it's very important that children see adults, because that's their future, right? Like CAF is having these meetings is very helpful. If you ask any chronic, any organizations that have chronic diseases, like hemophilia patients, like sickle cell patients, right? When adults and parents of children and their parents see the adults that they are doing a lot better, especially now, 20 years ago, I'm older than you guys, so. And the only thing we had was this 23-gauge needle that we had to use to do subcutaneously. And then you have to at least do it 5 days a week to work. So, and then now I hear patients are complaining they can't remember taking their pills. Well, we were dreaming these pills, you don't want to take it? You know what I'm saying? So it's because you haven't seen the hard part, and then something easily was given to you. And there are ways to remember, you are Gen Z. Technology, use your phone for your health, like set up reminders, alarms, all these things, right? So, so that you don't have to remember, okay, you're busy, everybody's busy, but people remember things, right? So that's how sometimes I even sit down and explain these things to my patients, help them to, so it's very important to talk to your doctor, because you may not think of something, and then you're the only one, but we are seeing everybody. And then we can give you examples of what happens if you don't do your chelations, or what happens if you postpone your transfusions and not show up for your transfusion on time. To believe it or not, we have patients who miss their transfusions even, right? Because they work or they go to school. But how long you can do this? Then you cannot go to school at all after a while. Sorry, I'm too long, but I think everybody should talk. So, yeah, so that's my little bit of advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what Zahra actually said about it being so important for children to see adults with thalassemia thrive actually reminded me, Pranav, you are a new dad, right?
I am a new dad, yes.
So it must feel really important for you to really thrive for your son. So can you tell me a bit about like any lessons that you've learned about balancing thalassemia and thriving with thalassemia?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a few things, but I think it's all about prioritization and making sure that I've got a work life, I have a family life, I have a personal life which includes thalassemia, but is not defined by thalassemia, right? And I just need to make sure that every part of that gets the attention it needs, right? And I'm hoping that's not my child screaming in the...
No, that's mine.
And, I love being a new dad, but what I love even more is sort of following in the footsteps of people who have already walked this as people with thalassemia, like Rob, right? Like, I'm watching everything your family is doing this weekend so we can learn about it. But when I'm in the clinic, that's sort of time for me. When I'm 9 to 5, my typical week, that's my work life. And I try as much as possible to disconnect and focus on the family life. And and I know that my son is a carrier and it's genetic and it'll live on with him, but he doesn't have to do the treatment regimen that I do.
Yeah, and do you have any advice for other thalassemia patients who might also be new parents?
I think it's it's a journey and it's different for everybody, right? It's not that much unlike thalassemia. It's a journey and it's different for everybody. So I think just being present is the best sort of universal advice. Just be present, be there, and get engaged. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Pakbaz, I often tell my patients that they shouldn't let thalassemia define who they are, right? So, outside of work, what is your passion? What do you like to do?
Traveling, which is not easy given the every 3-week schedule. So I try to, when I travel for work, I try to have a little bit of some time for myself, going out and then seeing the city and so I like traveling, seeing new cultures and new environment and learn about new places.
Nice. What about you, Robert? Any passions or hobbies?
Yeah, so my biggest hobbies outside of work are probably fitness and then being outside. I really like fishing in particular. And so really, working out, fishing, and video games. Those are like that's how I disconnect. And terrible reality TV if I get a chance.
Very relatable. And Pranav, it sounds like you love a great adventure, and traveling to 6 continents sounds like a great one. So tell us about any other adventures you enjoy and how you ensure that you can be adventurous while also living with thalassemia.
Yeah. So my love for adventure, my sort of seeking of adventure probably is rooted in having thalassemia, actually. I didn't know how long I would have, and the world is a big place, and let's go see it, right? So I've been very lucky to travel a lot. I, as a young child, sailed for 6 months on a boat from Iran to Japan and back with my dad, who was Merchant Marines. Traveled to 6 continents, spent 4 years working in Europe, never lived there. So I commuted to Europe for 4 years, which is a crazy way to live a life. Saw 17 or 18 countries in Europe, explored Bogota after the Civil War ended, which I would not recommend. That was a very dangerous thing to do. I'm a scuba diver. I've gone diving with great white sharks. I've gone swimming with whale sharks. I've climbed Uluru, which is the middle of the Australian outback, the big rock. Photo safaried in South Africa. And we were booked for my final continent to Antarctica, and we had a baby instead. So.
Wow, this is just amazing. I mean, to hear what wonderful lives you guys, all of you are leading, our panelists here. So let me ask you then, how would you encourage our fellow Thal Pals to thrive with thalassemia? Let's start with you, Dr. Pakbaz. How would you encourage our fellow Thal Pals to thrive with the thalassemia?
Right. So basically, whatever we talked about right now is that, don't feel sorry for yourself. That's not going to get you to anywhere. And this is what you have to deal with. So try to get the best out of your life. Be positive. If anybody else does anything, you can do it. If there's something that some other people told you, oh, they couldn't do it, then instead of thinking, oh, if they didn't do it, I cannot do it, ask them what happened that you couldn't do it. Like, you want to do it, so you talk to two group of people, those who were able to do it, and then those who were not able to do it. And then find out what was the boundaries or burdens that they couldn't do it. And then you figure out, okay, how those burdens is going to stop you, and then how you can prevent from being stopped. My life is impossible. That has been possible because when I was born, or I was 2-3 years old, my parents were told that I'm not going to live longer than, 2-3 years, back in 1970s. They had a daughter who passed away from thalassemia at age 3. So, but they didn't give up. And then when they told them that, oh, my older brother is going to die of thalassemia, they said, well, let's transfuse him. At least he lives a good life as long as he lives. And then he was 5 years old. He didn't die at age 3. So then they said, okay, let's have another baby. So I was the third one. So we had one not trait, and then one thalassemia, and I'm the second thalassemia. And nobody knew about thalassemia, how to diagnose it. They had to travel from far away to Tehran to get the diagnosis and figure out, okay, what they have to do. I was supposed to be not here 50 years ago, right? And then science is changing every day. See, we have now gene therapy. It was a dream 20 years ago. Nobody wanted to even touch the research. Even if they had the money, they wouldn't do it. But now, see, we have all different methods of gene therapy. So you never know where you can take your imagination and your dreams. Just follow your dreams, find the burdens, find a way to pass through the burdens. Yeah, nothing can stop you. You are between your dream and yourself.
Wow, that was really beautifully said. And what about you, Robert? What would you say to others with thalassemia?
I would say learn as much as you can about thalassemia so that you can be your own advocate. So the thalassemia treatment guidelines that Cooley Anemia publishes, and we're in the little laminated cards in the folders, memorize those and be able to recite those to whatever doctor you happen to see, because not everyone's fortunate enough to be treated at a thalassemia center of excellence. We live all over the country, all over the world, and it's important to be able to say this is what I need, and to be able to get the support from Cooley's Anemia Foundation or any of the thalassemia-specific doctors. So know everything that you can, and then use that knowledge to be your own advocate and advocate for yourself when you're speaking to a doctor or maybe someone at the workplace who doesn't know exactly what you're going through or exactly how to treat you. Be able to stand up for yourself and know exactly what you need to keep yourself healthy, and then actually do it. Follow all the recommendations. Be strict about your chelation. Actually make the appointments. Show up to your transfusions. All of the different appointments so that you can be in the best physical health possible. Because I mean, I think we all want to be here for a long time and be able to thrive, and you need to do all of that to thrive. So that's what I would say.
You know, Pranav, before I ask you your advice on how people are thriving, I actually want to ask you a more practical question. With the shifting of time zones, how do you time your chelation?
I don't know that I do anything special. Well, here's my approach. If I'm domestic and I haven't really traveled too many time zones, I'll just keep the same time, whatever I've been doing at home. If I travel internationally or sort of more than 3 time zones, I shift local. But as Zahra said, I'm using phone apps to remind me, right? So no matter how tired I am, no matter where I am, I'm remembering to be compliant, which is Rob's key point here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for a practical, very practical advice. So tell us how you would encourage others to thrive then.
I think, following up on what Rob said, it sounds like a lot to manage those things, to advocate for yourself, to learn all the recommendations and the standard of care. In fact, those are the things that allow you to shrink thalassemia into a box, right? And if you're well cared for and you're sort of keeping track of everything, you can now compartmentalize that a little bit and enjoy the rest of your life. And for me, I always say, none of us are thalassemia patients. We're people who are living with thalassemia, right? And whatever our interests are, everybody has a range of interest, right? Sort of live on the extreme edge of your interest, right? If you're an art person, do as much art as you can. And if you're a runner, get out as much as you can. If you're a traveler, travel as much as you can. But don't let the thalassemia part let you live on the boring end of that spectrum.
That's excellent advice. Thank you.
Can I add one more advice?
Absolutely.
So to understand what, I think one thing that I was talking to Shae about is to feel that what other people are going through. Everybody has to volunteer some hours somewhere for your college application or whatever, put it in your CV, right? So take advantage of that and then try to volunteer in a healthcare facility. Just whatever, a cancer center, a thalassemia, a sickle cell center, or a transplant program to see what other people go through. Because that's the only way. Nobody comes to talk to you about their disease in a regular daily basis. But then you can go see that, maybe thalassemia is not as bad as many other things that, other conditions that people have. And it's not uncommon to have, malignancy is very common. You can find any cancer center anywhere, any oncology clinic. So just go get a feel of other people's life, and then you realize, then you can come to a conclusion with yourself that what am I compared to these people and my life? I think that would be I was talking to you about it. What do you think?
Are you looking for interns right now? Is that what's happening? That could be a nice connection.
That's an awesome plug.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What do you think? Would that help you to have a touch of other people's life?
Thank you for putting me on the spot. But yeah, I feel like it's really good to be able to contextualize my experience by looking at what other people experience, whether that be looking at the experience of older thalassemia patients who had very different care, very different treatment to what I receive now, or whether it be seeing what cancer patients go through, or just other people who are also in the hematology department when I'm getting my transfusions, because I just feel like it's good to know what else is out there and to really be able to appreciate how lucky I am to have the treatment plan that I have and to be able to live the way that I do and thrive the way that I hope I do. But yeah.
Thank you. No, that's again very inspirational. You know what? I personally feel that this is one of the best episodes I've ever hosted. No, this is just amazing. Can you give a round of applause for our panelists?
You don't just say that every time?
I'm sorry?
You don't just say that every time?
No, seriously. This is the first time I ever said that. This is truly the best episode I ever hosted. No, it's been amazing hearing all of you speak and, sharing your stories, truly.
Yeah, it has been so amazing. I feel like I've learned so much from all three of you about how it really is like once you're a real adult. And I'm actually really curious, Dr. Kuo, what stood out to you in this episode?
Well, from my perspective as a treater for people with thalassemia, I feel that what I've learned here today is, we shouldn't let our disease define who we are. But more importantly, I think as a healthcare professional, we should be doing our part to support you in achieving your dreams, meaning that we should streamline the care and streamline the treatment as best as possible so that it doesn't interfere with what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do every day. And this has given me ideas as well. I mean, in my clinic so far, what we have done is that, we were able to have our patients do their cross matches near home, so they don't have to come all the way to the hospital to do cross matches. And I've set up clinic rooms for them to do their own work, so that is their home, essentially is their office, during the transfusion days. But now, after hearing all of you talk, I think it gives me even more inspiration to redesign my clinic. I think I'm just gonna blow everything up in that space and reconfigure it so that is more friendly towards patients. And because at the end of the day, all of us have our dreams, right? And the last thing what we as doctors want to do is to be imposing treatments upon you to prevent you from achieving your dreams.
Yeah, and I think this gives a message to patients that, especially adults, that when you go back to your clinics, take the literature and stuff that is here in outside of the room, and also talk to your provider about this conference, because it's not enough to just motivate the patients. You have to motivate your doctor to understand that this is a new era, and thalassemia patients are not convicted to die when they are a child. They can grow up, they can have a productive life, be part of the society, and live as long as they want, as long as they do whatever treatment that they are supposed to have. Because that's very important, how they plan your life. Because technically, they are part of your life. And you have to go with whatever they plan, right? So when they see, you can hold a job, you can be productive, maybe they start thinking about, let's have a weekend transfusion days, right? For adults, so that they don't lose because this is around the major issue for adults. Our hospitals and our programs are not ready that, okay, now we have adults, what do we do? How do we let them, live like a usual life like everybody else? So some people need to sacrifice their weekends to get their blood transfusion on a weekend to keep their job, right? So this is an opportunity for you I just saw 3 nurses from Alabama that they were here, and then they were really inspired by the conference, and they were gonna go back and do a lot of changes to their program, right? So this is very important to include your doctors, your nurses in your life, and let them in, and then bring them in these conferences. And I'm sure CAF has ways to support that the providers also come and participate in these conferences.
Thank you, Dr. Pakbaz. What about you, Shae? What did you get out of this chat today?
I feel like the most important thing I learned is about balance, and how before we even think about balance, we have to always prioritize our treatment and prioritize our health. Because I feel like it's really easy, especially like as a teenager, to want to put my thalassemia care in like the background. But after hearing all 3 of you talk so deeply about how important it is to prioritize yourself and your treatment before you go on to do such amazing things, I just feel like that's so inspirational. So yeah, thank you.
And maybe I'll say it, even a little bit differently, is that if you put it in the background, it will come into the foreground in a way you don't want, right? So keep it prioritized, and then you can manage it. and then you can do everything else you want.
Sage advice. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the applause, but why don't we do it again? Let's give our panelists, our co-host Shae Ghosh, as well as all of you, a round of applause again. Thank you.
And before we entirely wrap up, I would like to really quickly thank Nina Maria Badalamenti, who was initially supposed to co-host this episode and who unfortunately couldn't make it here today, and who very graciously handed me the microphone. So thank you to her for this opportunity that just kind of landed in my lap. But other than that, as a reminder that if you like the show, please share it. Tell your friends and anyone in the community who would find this helpful. You'll be able to hear this podcast on the Thal Pals podcast feed next month, and a video of the panel will be available shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Thal Pals, and that's a wrap. And we'll see you next time on Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution.